Do you know if anyone's joining virtually?
We'll have for sure city engineer Luke Melitik.
Mark Opitz will be in person.
Yep, I saw Mark earlier today. We did a tour of Way Forward.
Voting in progress.
I will call the June 24th Conservancy Lands Committee to order. And I am at roll call.
All right, Chair West.
Present.
Vice Chair Bernthal.
Present.
Alder Baines.
Present.
Public Works Designee Bechtel. PRFC Designee Tressler.
Present.
All right. Member Gurn is absent and excused. And student member Roden is joining us via Zoom. Also with us tonight is adaptive restoration ecologist Evelyn Williams for our discussion on the Confluence Pond, North Fork, South Fork. City engineer Luke Melodic is here via Zoom, and associate planner Scott Heacock and District 6 Alder Mark Opitz is here.
Okay. Next item is acceptance of the minutes.
And the mayor is here. Is it?
No.
Next item is acceptance of the minutes from March 25th. Are there any comments or things that need to be changed? Hearing none, I will accept the minutes. The minutes are accepted. And first item is welcome new committee members. Daniela Roden is our new student member, and some of us met her at the meeting for all the committee members and orientation. So welcome, Daniela. Mary Bechtel is reappointed from Public Works. So glad to see you again. And Lily Tressler is here from Parks and Recreation. She's the student member there, and good to see you again. Okay, first item is election of the chairperson. So any nominations? Not, I'll nominate James Gurn.
I second.
Any other nominations?
I think it's very magnanimous of Susan to nominate Jim, but if she'll accept, I'd like to nominate Mary Bechtel.
It's very kind of you. I am not going to accept the nomination just because I'd like to keep my focus on Public Works and yeah, attend as a liaison only, but I appreciate it.
Okay.
So all in favor of Jim Gurn, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Jim is elected. Next item is election of vice chairperson. Do we have any nominations?
Yeah, I'll nominate Susan West.
Any other? All in favor of me being nominated as vice chair? Please say aye.
Aye. But we didn't have a second.
We didn't have a second.
Second.
Yeah. Okay, Mary. And it's unanimous. Okay. And since Jim is not here, I will continue as chair. We need appointment of a member to Water Resources Management Commission. I've been serving in that position for the last couple of years. So. Mary?
I will nominate Tom Bernthal. His experience, I think he would be a great addition to the Water Resources Management Commission as a liaison.
And I will second.
Okay. Then all in favor of Tom?
Aye.
Okay, first item is Confluence Pond, North Fork, South Fork Ecological Assessment and Vegetation Management Plan. So Kevin, how do you want us to go about this? Tom and I have met and gone over it.
Yeah, Evelyn is here from Adaptive Restoration. If you want to give us a background and
Yeah,
and
maybe
just,
except for
Sure.
Yeah,
most of the people, the background.
and I
yes.
have the plan attached here. So if there's pages you want me to show, or if you've got something that I don't have up here, let me know.
Sure. So this is the third management plan that Adaptive has done for the city after the completion of the Conservancy land's larger sort of system plan. So this is our effort to get a management plan for each conservancy that will then last for 10 years. So at least having something at least as current as 10 years for each conservancy. Confluence, North Fork, and South Fork, they're each distinct conservancies, but we've decided to put it into one management plan since they have a lot of, literally things flowing from one to the other. And they also have some similarities in that they are all kind of very surrounded by the same matrix of development in terms of commercial and industrial development. Just interesting to me about this plan compared to some of the other plans I've done, which have been Graber and Bach. The conservancies here that we're talking about are really long and narrow, and they have a lot of edge, which is an important ecological factor. It means there's a lot of things coming into these conservancies that the city doesn't necessarily have control over in terms of invasive species or water, nutrients, things like that. There's also a lot of evidence that there was previous management in a lot of these areas. So there's prairie species that are found, and they're all kind of hanging out in a matrix of invasive species. So just kind of a interesting way to look at in terms of compared to some things like Block, which is mostly native species with a couple invasive species hanging out underneath. I've talked to Kevin already a little bit about the plan, and I think one of the big things that will be in the final draft will be a little bit more detail for each of the different conservancies and dividing them up a little bit more into each unit, and then having a more specific guidance on restoration activities that could be in each of those units. So very brief overview.
Okay. I have one or two comments. One is a very specific minor one. You were talking about management of deer for a couple of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
The one I'd like to see is for chronic wasting disease, because we are getting overpopulation. And about 20 years ago, DNR had us, the whole state, calling deer to get the number down because it's dangerous to the deer population.
I will say that, we've talked about deer populations in past
Mhm.
plans, but those are ones that are a lot more, again, less edge
Yeah.
and are a little bit more contained. And it's a lot easier to think about doing some sort of management.
Then this is a
So
little harder to do.
It's harder to do.
But I would say at least mention it for the deer's sake and for the public's sake, that it is a valid health concern, because people can get chronic wasting disease from deer.
Yeah, they would have to be hunting it in the city and then eating it though too. And then,
Well, coming in contact, this is me from the vet school,
okay, yes, fair enough. Fair.
coming in contact with vegetation that they have just eaten. So an example is my raised bed, lettuce bed, 4 feet high on my driveway. I go out early in the morning and pick lettuce from there, and it's a deer with it. I could end up getting it if I ate that lettuce. And we do have deer. My neighbor reported about a week ago, 4 deer in our 2 driveways. So it is a concern. And I have a feeling DNR is going to start doing something, because we're way above. We used to keep 7 deer in the Conservancy, and we're way above that. So that's my one specific one, is just the health issue. The bigger one is just in general, it needs a lot more information justifying the importance of the conservancies along, our stormwater features. So that we can sell it to council that by getting native plantings there, it's going to help on stormwater management. And that gets to be a little bit more bigger and complicated, but I think, it's not just the, use of pedestrians, walkers, so on, and recreational use. It's getting it will have a stormwater benefit.
Okay.
A big benefit. Specifically, Big Blue has 12-foot roots.
Right, yes, yep. I was just reading a note about that.
Yeah. If you're putting in Big Blue or Little Blue or whatever.
Yeah.
Those are the grasses. Tom, do you have additional? I didn't get to read. what you
Yeah,
sent
so-
this afternoon. I'm sorry.
Susan and I had gotten together a couple weeks ago, talked about the plan, and I had intended to get comments that we would work on together and submit, but time didn't allow that. And so I put together some general comments that I sent a couple hours ago. So my apologies to especially to Evelyn for submitting something at the very last minute. But basically and so I think Kevin you sent it to everybody. So everybody's got it.
I sent it to Evelyn after you got it. So it's not something.
But not the
everybody's
committee.
seen. Yeah, that came in just a few
I
hours.
got-
So I guess I would like that.
But if you want-
distributed.
Yeah, if you
But I
could
don't-
read through some of those for discussion, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to spend a lot of time since we've got such a huge agenda tonight. But it's just, Susan and I were talking about just really how important the confluence pond is for stormwater management and protection of downstream. The main creek corridor really depends on that confluence pond to mitigate flows and to have storage capacity for water before it gets into that very narrow, very steep ravine of a creek corridor. And so it was, the 2018 flood would have been even more damaging to the creek corridor if that confluence, that was really critical. And there is also a tremendous amount of phosphorus and sediment that's ending up in that pond. And so it's kind of ironic. I mean, we're in the Conservancy Lands Committee, and I'm talking a lot about stormwater issues that, but I just want to put this out there so that people on the council recognize how critical this is. And so managing it well from a stormwater perspective is not necessarily what you're tasked with. But it's the point that I think we need to understand when we're thinking about budgeting. And so dredging of the pond has to occur because it is being effective as a sediment trap, and that will remove phosphorus. When we remove phosphorus, we have to find a safe place to dispose of the spoils, though, and that needs to be paid close attention to. And then the management of the native vegetation around the shores is also, like Susan said, going to have a stormwater benefit. And I think you talked about the sandbar willow along the South Fork that you urged.
Let me tell you.
Yeah,
Luckily, before the 2018 flood, the city had cleared out all the willow that went from Highway 14 over to Costco
On the South Fork.
on the South Fork. That was willow 10 to 12 feet high and 10 feet wide, at least on each side. If that hadn't been cleared, we would have had one huge disastrous flood. It was bad enough out there. with Costco Rising when the railroad track got blown out. But it would have been even worse with all the debris that would have collected in that, in the willows. So maintaining it with native grasses, native prairie plants is going to make it so the water can come up over the banks and still flow freely.
Do you know when those willows were removed along that? Like
It was probably about 2 years before, so I would say like 2016. And there were a lot of people that were real angry because we took away bird's nest and so on. But I think replacing it with native prairie and flowers that are equally interesting will solve that thing.
Is there any, I know you want to go back to you, but quick questions for folks. Do we know of any sort of model or citation of someone who's done a study about what would have happened if Confluence Pond had not been there? Like, does anyone know of, has ever done a speculation?
I don't know if Herb's done anything formal with it.
Yeah.
I'd
He's
be
talked
interesting
about
as a
it,
good
yeah.
reference.
I mean, you could probably get him to make some comments about it. I don't know that you could have a study to cite.
And then, so the phosphorus disposal, I've heard, I think when I was talking to Luke, when we did kind of like a walk around the site, we talked about that as well. And just, people may not know them now, but if folks here have creative ways to dispose of that dredging material, I don't know if it's fill for other things or, some other way to dispose it other than landfill.
Because I was on council back then, when we did do the dredging of the Confluence Pond, it was a money issue. And so it was cheaper just to put them there.
Okay.
That's another thing that we need to pay a lot of attention to. I mean, that's more a water resources issue, but getting rid of the phosphate laden soils is, hopefully we could find some farmers or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to, be nice to have some sort of recommendation of whether,
Yeah.
Yeah, you might want to talk to the people at the county that did what they called the Suck the Muck program.
Yeah.
I know that I think they created their own disposal areas. And so those are probably full. But they may have ideas that the city,
And this
in
is
terms of
actually something important for basically, especially the Confluence Pond, but these other ponds are getting buildup of soils that are going to be laden with phosphate.
Do you know anyone that was part of that program, Tom? I can email about you too or I'll just do a Google search. But
you want to talk to John Reimer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
John Reimer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So those were the main points I wanted to make, and they're more general comments than any. It's not page 154 put in this phrase. But just in general, so you've got this pond that's very important stormwater wise. You're gonna have to dredge it. It's gonna have fluctuating water levels. The aquatic vegetation is not gonna be preservable when it's dredged. That just has to be understood as that's going to be unavoidable.
And Tom, I don't know for the future, but I know one of the recent ponds that's been dredged, the Middleton Hills South Pond, they're now putting in plastic linings on the bottom. So that, and the water sinks through that, but the soils stay on top of it.
Kevin, do you want me to just give a quick overview?
Which is,
you can't hear me
on that.
Yeah.
Because then you don't have any infiltration.
Well, no, they're getting infiltration through the plastic.
Oh,
So it's permeable.
Permeable, yeah.
Yeah, so but the aquatic vegetation will recolonize, and the shoreline native plant communities, the value of having those as native plant communities, in addition to the stabilization of the soil and the roots, is that these areas, even small areas, and this is not small compared to our lawns, but the native plants have huge benefits for insect populations and bird populations.
Mhm.
And that's something that people don't really factor in, I don't think. When they think of wildlife, they're thinking of bigger things.
Yeah, I mean, a good example of that, Mark, you're aware of this, when the Middleton Hills ponds, once we cleared those, and again, it was surrounded by a lot of buckthorn and so on. We suddenly got the sandhill cranes in that have same pair have been there for like probably 20 years now. We're getting all sorts of other wild birds and so on in there because it was cleared out.
We have stormwater utility manager Luke on the call, and he can clear up a couple things if you'd like him to.
Yes. Are you through, Tom?
Pretty much. The last point I wanted to make was managing native vegetation is not the same as mowing a lawn or, mowing the way a lot of people understand it. And prescribed burning may be important and certainly spot treatment of invasives is what's required to do that. And that all requires a budget.
Yeah.
That's it.
Luke, do you have comments?
Okay, so I'm going to hit that button.
It's like someone's waiting to enter the.
Can you? Yeah.
In terms. Oh,
Can you hear me, Kevin? You guys hear me now? Yes. Okay. Yeah. So I guess just to start off, I've been working with Kevin pretty closely on the vegetation management side of things out here. We do acknowledge that we need to take a more targeted approach to mowing and management of the vegetation out here. I think the biggest issue is we still have a lot of willows popping up. So that'll have to take a more targeted approach of cutting and treating the stumps. I think those are the biggest issues from a stormwater perspective, as Susan had talked about earlier. Um, Regarding the dredging and the dredging spoils, just to give a schedule for that, we're looking at 2028 for a design on, I guess it's not really a design, it's more an investigation by a consultant into um, the quality of those soils that are currently in the dewatering bags. Typically, you'll want to dewater those soils so it doesn't cost as much to remove and dispose of them. Um, they may have arsenic in them. If they do, we'll probably have to take them to a landfill or something. But that'll help give us more options moving forward on disposal there. And then for the dredging of Confluence Pond, we're looking at is that we're looking at quite a few years out on that. That'd be closer to 2031, 2032. We'd start design for that, just so everyone's aware. And when we do dredge the pond, we would not put a plastic liner or anything in there. This area's already got high groundwater. That's an issue that all the development in the business park runs into. So there would be no liner. It would just be the natural bottom. The idea is we would just dewater the spoils once again in that area off to the south of Confluence Pond once they're relocated before this project. And I guess since we touched on the Middleton Hills Pond, that liner is not permeable. The reason is not permeable is because it is a wet pond, so it needs to hold water in order to function properly. Just wanted to clear that up as well. But overall, I guess Kevin and I have been working really closely on the vegetation part of things out here. I think we have a path to move forward.
Trying to stop the feedback.
Yes.
Okay,
That's
so
right.
because the recommendation is for feedback. We don't need a motion on this.
No, we'll see this again in a month.
Okay.
Yep.
Has there been any decision about, we had talked about there's 3 different committees, like having a joint meeting or?
Yeah, so right now we have Airport Commission that's going to look at this their first week of July. That's the plan. Water Resources will look at it third week of July, and then we have to make a decision about doing a joint meeting, which I think is a good way to get everyone in the same room and discuss any final issues and make a recommendation for approval of this plan.
Okay. Next item is referral of pheasant. Yes. No, active transportation plan draft review. Or am I getting too
Number
far?
6.
Yeah, okay. Path and Trail Network standard specifications and standard detailed drawings.
So this one is coming forward. Luke is online and he's going to give a little bit of background on what standard specifications are and why they're important or as they pertain to this agenda item specifically. Hold on.
What do you want to look?
Or I'm going to have Luke speak on what a standard specification is, because I think it's just important to learn that a little bit before we start talking about the why and what and recommendation from here. So I'm going to unmute this. Luke, if you're ready to talk.
Yep, you can hear me. Perfect. Yeah, so just as a quick background, we have plenty of standard details and standard specs for a lot of different things in the city. So all of our water system, our sewer system, our roadways, pretty much anything you could think of on a typical roadway or utility project, we would have a standard specification and a standard detail for. These really help, particularly with development projects. This way we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time a developer comes in and wants to put in a path. There doesn't need to be a new design for every single segment. This is essentially just a cookie cutter. In a typical situation, we can apply these standards and go from there. However, there's always situations where there's unforeseen circumstances or there are space constraints, things like that. That's where we would use something called special provisions. If you look at our standard spec documents on the Public Works website, there is a section 700 special provisions. Right now, that is just a blank document. So what is used with that is the consultant or engineer will come in, take those, and write new specifications for things that are outside of our standard specifications. So a good example of a current project that would be applicable to this is the High Road redesign. The High Road redesign uses 3 or 4 different standard sections for the roadway corridor throughout that stretch of roadway that's being reconstructed. None of those sections are actually part of our standard roadway cross sections. So I just wanted to use that as an example of something where if we're going for a different design or we wanted width to be different or the base needs to be different on a path, that is always an option. These standard details and standard specs don't tie us into anything. They don't handcuff us to making decisions. We can always change things as they go along. The things that standard specs help with a lot are, as I mentioned, the developments. When there's an outside consultant that isn't familiar with the city or a developer that isn't familiar with the city as well, we can pass off these standard specs and details to get them incorporated so they're consistent with the rest of the city. The second big benefit is that they're consistent throughout the city. Now, as I mentioned, that won't be the case in every single project, But as a general rule of thumb, if we're going to have to go replace a section of path, for example, in the Conservancy, we'll have a pretty good idea of what's under there without having to track down project files from 20 years ago, um, or doing any sort of additional investigation beyond what's necessary. So I think those are the main benefits of having standard specs and details. I think we had a question on cost at the last meeting I talked about this on, and that that could be a consideration. So if we wanted to tone down the specs or standards, um, just to save costs, we could do that. However, that could always be looked at on a project by project basis. So I guess that's the broad overview. I guess Kylie or Kevin, if there's anything else you'd want me to speak to in terms of standards as a whole, I'd be happy to do so.
That was very helpful. I appreciate you going through standard specifications. If this body has further questions for you, we'll switch around the speakers here again. I just want to say this is a very exciting moment. The standard specifications went to PureFC at their previous meeting, and now they're coming to CLC for your review. For recommendation to Public Works. In our ordinance, all standard specifications need approval by Public Works, and with paths and trails and that network being in parks and conservancy lands, I think it's necessary for both of these bodies to give feedback and input into the specifications. And we're really excited to have a cross-section or know how we're constructing our paths, our developers are, so that we can develop a very comprehensive or maintenance plan going forward. Something that we kind of lack as a team here is having a really thorough maintenance plan for our trail system and being able to ask for funds for that. So this is going to be able to get us a square footage of how much each of these specifications would cost. So we're excited about that. And then maybe just to highlight or show the asphalt path standard spec or just
Specification.
The format of these are all going to look very similar on how they're laid out, and we have a format that is following how the Public Works standard specifications are laid out. It sounds like the Public Works wants to do an overhaul of this in the future, but right now we're matching their layout of and formatting. So we did that. MSA was the consultant that we worked on. The asphalt specification, we are trying to get to a point where it's very long lasting, and then also can sustain all of our equipment that utilizes that surface. So a vac truck, for instance, or our V plow, those are two of our heavier pieces of equipment that access our trail system. And just to kind of go over the list that we have for the standard specs and detail drawings, that we have asphalt as material, crushed limestone, fabricated boardwalk, and then polymer granite and GSB 88. And so I think we're all familiar with an asphalt material and crushed limestone, and then the boardwalk material, but two that might be of the last ones, that polymer granite path standard specification is a newer material. This is something that is kind of newer in the industry. It is essentially a crushed limestone that has a wax polymer added to it, and there's some movable product and flexible product, and once you put it down, it hardens or it becomes almost like a glued product, but because that wax binds it together. So you have less erosion issues. We're looking at trying this product out in some smaller areas, potentially at the pump track in the middle, just because they're more test site areas. And then looking at where we can add that into our trail system and where it makes sense. And then for GSB 88, this is something that we did a few years back on the North Mendota, Lakeview Park, and through the Creek Corridor. And this is essentially a sealant. This is the same product that's used throughout our street system to protect and keep the asphalt from degrading. So it's just a protective and a maintenance measure for that. But that's a list of all of the specifications that are presented, detailed drawings that are presented on the packet tonight. We had a few really good questions, and these specifications, when we're using them for the first time, it's a good example. Luke and I were working to put that in, or Luke was working to put it on the trailhead, or the new project at the bridge project, and that we were testing that out and working with Strand, and they had made some edits. So as we're utilizing these specifications, there may be a few pieces that need to be modified and changed, and we'll learn along the way. But a few suggestions that came up in the last few days is adding ADA standard and slope references for asphalt. And then a minimum, we're looking at a minimum of 8 feet for asphalt, but throughout in our typical drawing, we'd have 10 feet, but at least setting that 8-foot minimum for asphalt. Those are good suggestions that we'd like to add into the specification that's not currently on there. So we would be editing that before it goes to Public Works. And I talked a lot. We're trying to ultimately get to a trail maintenance program that you all would be looking at and reviewing. If you've seen the Streets 5-year program, is everybody familiar with the Streets 5-year program, or maybe hasn't seen it yet or will see it this budget season? I'd encourage you guys to look at that. Similar, but roads are roads. I don't mean to say this with Luke on here. Trails are a little bit more complex. Like there's stairs, there's ped bridges, there's limestone paths, asphalt paths. So there's a lot of different components to managing a trail system. I think roads are probably way larger for sure, but there's a lot of materials and change in materials and sensitivity to the environments that we work in. So it's a complicated maintenance program that we're hopefully trying to get to the table for your input in, so we can get budgets in front of finance and common council, and we can get that in front of the finance and common council in the future. That's very data driven and has all of that, so you guys don't have to be picking out of a hat what to work on, or we don't either. Kevin and I, we want to have it more of a data driven plan, and this helps us get one step closer to that.
Okay. Other comments? Tom?
I have a couple of questions. I'm not sure if they're for Luke or for Kevin or for Kylie, but and they the answer may be that's not what we're talking about. So one is just on looking at the boardwalk. Is there any kind of standard for anti-slip surfaces?
That's not on the specification for anti-slip. We have looked at several other communities, and we can let Luke talk. He probably has a good feedback, but we looked at several other communities and really modeled this one after Dane County. The anti-slip is something that it can't always be used to the best of my knowledge, because if we would put I call them grips. What is it called? How do you say it? Grip slip?
Grip strips.
Grip strips. Yeah. So if we put those down, let's say in the creek corridor on the deck or the bridge decking there, we do snow removal there, and it would rip all the boards up and rip all those grip strips up. And so that's really hard to say, but where we have them currently are on boardwalks that snow isn't maintained on. And even with brushing them, that can be of a challenge to do so. We can continue exploring materials with that. I think when we're talking about rain and ice conditions, there's always going to be conditions where the surfacing isn't going to have as much traction as it does when it's dry, right? But we have been working with Dane County and trying to understand a little bit further on what materials they have used and found success there and how they use their signage and that. I think we came up with a good solution, but if Luke has more to add to it, I can.
Yeah, so I guess regarding the anti-slip or any traction device on top of the boardwalk, that's something that could just be specified with any given project. Doesn't necessarily have to be a standard detail. Like I said earlier, that could be one of those special provisions that gets added on if it's appropriate for the area being developed. I guess one other thing I would point out is that all of these boardwalks would still have to be designed by a structural engineer. These standards at least provide a starting point. Any of the foundations, it'll change depending on if you're in a wetland, if you're in a more upland area, if you're over like Greater Pond, for example, or Tiedemann Pond, where the pilings are actually in the water. That would all be designed by a structural engineer.
Go ahead.
Oh, should I start over?
Oh, yeah, fine.
So I had three other questions, and I think they're all in the same realm of the answer is that they're handled during the design process. Water bars, what do you do with wetland soils or wetland adjacent soils that are wet? And how do you deal with footings? So the answer to all of that is that it's handled in the design, and these specs are not the special provisions is what you would expect to deal with these things, right?
Yeah, so I guess it does state in the specs and on at least one of the drawings that all the design for the complete boardwalk system would be designed by a structural engineer. So footings, anything, any changes to what our standard would be project specific.
Thanks.
You guys are muted now.
Did I don't know.
We're good.
I don't know.
I think if I just do this one,
Then I don't touch that one.
I think so.
Okay.
I think we're okay. Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, we are trying to get to the direction. We have more of a helical pile. We've seen success. I know Tony's on the call here. He's spoken very highly of the boardwalk in Middleton Hills South, and that has been doing very well. And we like the pilings that are set up in that system. So.
Does anyone else have comments? I have one. I like the fact that the paved trails will have a minimum width, but that the others are flexible, because I can see there are areas like in near the Eagles, you might want only just a little path for one person wide. And the same thing for the boardwalks, that it needs to be a little bit more variable based on the situation.
Mm-hmm.
So, and those aren't in there, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, we looked at that for sure. The we have in the ATP a policy for shared use paths to be a minimum of 8 or oh my gosh, 10 feet. Don't confuse people. 10 feet. So that we would have a minimum of 10 feet for like an asphalt shared use. We wouldn't ever want to go lower than 8 feet for asphalt because they don't have equipment to lay the material. It would then be more cost adverse to go lower than 8 feet as a minimum. But there are situations where we would do an 8-foot path.
Okay, so we need to recommend.
Yeah.
Specifically. Adoption of the standard specifications and standard detail. Do we have a motion? I will
We
make,
adopt the standard specifications as given to us.
and I will second that. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. No one? Okay. Let's go on to the active transportation plan draft review. And Evelyn, you are free to leave.
Thank you, Evelyn.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Kevin, I'm gonna attempt to share screen if you can give me permission to.
Wow, I can do that.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Scott Heacock. I'm an associate planner here working for the city of Middleton. I am a recovering consultant, so I did come with a slideshow. Let's get this pulled up.
Magic working.
It looks like
It just got a green border. It's a good sign.
Do one participant share at a time. Everybody,
Yeah, he's.
it's coming now.
Hey, there it is. Thank you.
Great.
And I read this more, didn't read it carefully enough. Can we go back to let Lily, because she has to leave at 7? And it's getting real close to it. Give her liaison report quickly.
Oh, yeah, I can do that. I mean, it wasn't that much, I think, notable that happened. We had our chair and vice chair elections. We elected Andre Prokrat as chair. I think Katie Nelson still as vice chair. We talked about the storm damage that came last week with the kind of double header storm. And we acknowledged that there was a lot of down trees and stuff in the Conservancy too, and that was all being worked on diligently by the city and staff. We also recommended as the adoption of the standard specifications and detailed drawings of the path and trail, and talked about those new types of trail as well. And then we talked about the Conservancy Trailhead project, which I think we said was also seen here before. That reached us, I think, for the first time, and we just had discussion on it, no motion.
Okay, thank you, Lily. And you're free to leave when you.
Okay.
Okay, we'll
Right.
continue.
Great. So as I said, my name is Scott Heacock. I'm an associate planner with the city of Middleton, presenting the active transportation plan we've been working on over the past year plus with the City of Middleton's Pedestrian, Bicycle, and Transit Committee. We've prepared a draft of the plan and circulated it around to the committees that are most closely tied to bicycle and pedestrian activities in the city. And today we're not looking for a motion, looking for general review and feedback that we can incorporate into the draft prior to it going out for public input.
Does anyone have comments?
I have a brief presentation if
Okay,
that's all right.
okay.
All right, so first, what is active transportation? Broadly speaking, it refers to ways of getting around that prioritize walking, biking, rolling, and other human-powered types of travel. It talks about places that are designed and built for people, not just for cars, and making sure that our streets and paths and crossings are all safe and comfortable for everybody in the city. For the background of why we are undertaking this plan, the City of Middleton's comprehensive plan recommended that we adopt and actually refer to an updated active transportation plan for additional policy and action statements. And to also in particular focus on updating the bicycle network map. Before we had versions over the course of a couple different plans that were all in PDF form. This was a great opportunity for us to do some internal housekeeping, get those into our GIS system, and understand all of the future paths that we are hoping to install, so that decisions that we make on unrelated things, we're incorporating that as a part of that process. So the last ped bike plan we had was over 17 years ago, and so we wanted to get a fresh look at what are the priorities of the community. So we did a initial public survey. Following that, staff reviewed and summarized a lot of the local and regionally adopted plans and ongoing initiatives throughout the city. There's a lot of things going on, and this is a topic, I think more so than many, that crosses a lot of different boundaries within city government. So it's really important for us to get talking with each other, understand the different programs and how they all tie into this larger idea of active transportation. In particular, I want to thank Kylie and Kevin and Luke that are on the call today. Kylie took me on a tour of all the trails right when I was a fresh new planner here. Kevin connected me with the city forester at one point and was able to ask the question of, when you're out in the field, what are the things that are the very front end of the process that you go, man, I wish somebody would have thought of this as I'm planting trees around. So that helps us planners in the front end catch things in design to make sure that it's accommodating the tree canopy, which is really important for comfort of pedestrians and bicyclists. And the standard specs that we were just looking at, through the conversations we had with this plan, we really came to know that 10 feet as a standard width for shared use paths is really important. And we know that there's some upcoming segments of boardwalks that need to be at least 10 feet wide, because if you had something narrower than that, you would hit each other on your bikes if you're going different ways and fall off into the marsh. So, some of the little blocking tackling like that, a lot of these conversations we had between departments has already been really helpful for us to work collaboratively together as a team. We all can't be in the same meetings all the time with each other, so it helps us to be able to move quickly through a lot of these topics. We held some work sessions during committees. In particular, we had 2 joint meetings with the Ped Bike Transit Committee and the Public Works Committee. This is a picture from the October meeting where we put out some big maps, got some Sharpies, and said, what are the areas in the city that you think are the biggest safety concerns? And we were able to incorporate that into our research over the past winter as we kind of dug into some of these issues. And then now that we have a draft of the plan coming soon, Ped Bike Transit Committee in July 9th meeting is going to review the draft as commented on and reviewed by the various committees, and we will enter into the public input period. So the plan starts talking about why active transportation is important. In brief, active communities are more sustainable, they're more equitable, they're more affordable, they're healthier, they're stronger economically. And one thing we don't want to lose sight of is they are just more fun. The plan goes on to highlight a couple of different projects, including a lot of the missing links that were completed between 2009 and now. An upcoming project in 2027 where Century Avenue Bridge is going to be reconstructed, and that's going to include an underpass that safely connects people across Century Avenue into the new trailhead for Pheasant Branch Conservancy. One strategy we really wanted to highlight is the proactive path design through new subdivisions. Alder Opitz, during his career here as a city planner, played a large role in making sure that as these new subdivisions developed, that the paths are designed at the front end of that process so that we're not doing expensive retrofits later on as we want to expand the path system, and that it makes a clear, logical connection. This in particular will help connect a loop through the northern side of the city so that people in these neighborhoods can easily get to other parts of the city. And lastly, a big focus of that 2009 plan was the finding a north-south corridor for bicyclists, particularly from, it's the same road that changes names a couple times, from Gammon to Park to High. And this is a before and after picture that's in the plan that really shows what it looks like when you take a road from 4 lanes, which is one of the more dangerous configurations. So there's not a median, to narrowing it so there's a center turn lane with bicycle lanes on the outside. That's a strategy that right now we're studying to see if it is feasible on Century Avenue. So there's an RFP that was issued to have an engineering consultant look at the details of that more closely, but on a planning level, it passes the initial smell test of yes, this is a feasible option. Plan has a series of goals and strategies oriented around designing useful routes, building safe routes, maintaining comfortable routes, creating interesting routes, and promoting active transportation. I don't have the time to go into all of these today, but part of what we hope to do was structure this plan in a way that was really friendly, particularly for newer committee members, people that aren't necessarily always thinking about active transportation in the purview of their committee, but might have, you know, tangentially be tied to it. The general public, older people, just to get people up to speed really quickly on, you know, what are the strategies and what are the concrete actions that the city can take to do this. And in some, I think one of the big takeaways from this plan is that we're really trying to operationalize the complete streets policy to make sure we're integrating it into the day-to-day stuff that we are doing as a city. We have an updated bicycle network map. As I mentioned, there's a lot of work that went into this. Daphne Shu in particular from the planning department spent a lot of time in GIS just combing through the different versions of maps from different organizations and really putting together this version after a couple of rounds of review with the committees. One of the questions on the initial public survey was, what are the most challenging crossings that you see in the city? And so this map is an example of us taking that and, you know, mapping it out. So we got a heat map of the areas in the city that anecdotally people feel less comfortable with. This is going to really help guide the Public Works Department is doing a traffic screening study. This will help us compare some of those technical analyses with this more anecdotal public survey comment. We're hoping to ask a similar question on our end of the project survey to the public. We can see how things have changed. You'll notice that the Century and Allen intersection really pops in this one. This survey happened before the reconstruction. Hopefully after the reconstruction that goes down a little bit. And Kyle and Kevin have been working really hard on putting together path condition ratings. They've told me these are very tentative because it sounds like we're still field checking stuff, but you know, to get a general sense that North Fork has a large stretch, one of the worst conditions in the system. That's something that we've been able to determine, along with a couple of smaller segments that are pretty degraded and in need of prioritization.
Just in terms of the material or physical breakdown?
Yeah. For example, the one by Esser Pond. I walked up there to take a picture of the trail and it was starting to crumble underneath my feet, which is not an ideal environment for folks. So the data that's going into this is going to really inform that long-term maintenance program to make sure that we are getting all of our trails on a consistent maintenance schedule and understanding relative prioritization so we can focus on the worst areas first and getting them up to a higher standard. Modeling after what the Public Works Department has very successfully done with the 5-year streets program. And then lastly, the plan ends on a few appendices. Appendix A, a narrative summary of the bicycle network map. Appendix B, a best practices guide that summarizes a lot of the standard specs information, national standards, and from other communities that we looked at, and puts in a really easy to understand handbook for any new staffer or committee member or elected official that wants to really understand what is the best practice, and a summary of potential funding sources. We are adding a fourth appendix that's an implementation table. That was a recommendation that came out of Plan Commission and sustainability committees, so that we take a lot of these strategies and sort them into easy to track goals so that we can track our progress a little bit better over time. And so with that, I always like to end on a pretty picture. Any questions and comments?
Yeah, I have one. This is actually one that came up several years ago. In relation to Middleton Hills, it's showing streets that you want to put a sidewalk on the other side, like around the stormwater detention ponds.
Mhm.
And what we call the big hill in the neighborhood, and the Conservancy lands that are up on Glacier Ridge and John Muir.
Mhm.
These all have, you're putting sidewalks in on the edges of conservancies, which will take away conservancy space. When there is a 5-foot sidewalk and a 5-foot street terrace on the other side of, in some cases, a 1-lane road, I don't think it's necessary. It will take away just from the concept of it being this nice neighborhood with lots of natural conservancy areas in it, and turn it more to a city street. And you walk through there and you never see people trying to, other than around the detention ponds on the grass. Occasionally you might find somebody walking there. But when people are trying to get places, they go on the sidewalk on the other side of the street.
Right.
So I see a waste of city money, and it will downgrade the neighborhood. And at that point, when I expressed this, it was taken out and it's gotten put back in.
So that map in particular, what we did is our comprehensive plan has a map of all the sidewalk gaps that exist in the city,
Yeah.
whether or not we would ever intend to fill them in. And what this plan updated for that is the comp plan also listed a general prioritization of which ones would be the highest priority and which ones would be the lowest priority. So we did a little bit of GIS work to assign those general priority levels. And if I remember correctly, that stretch was likely graded as a low priority because ones that are along a conservancy edge or if there's a sidewalk across the street generally score a lot lower because there is, as you mentioned, other connectivity opportunities. So in practice, I wouldn't see us actively pursuing that. This is just intended as a way to make it a little bit more transparent of, you know, the comp plan has those sidewalk gaps holistically all as one level. And this was an attempt to prioritize within those of which ones are the high priorities and which ones are the low
Because this should
priorities.
definitely be at the lowest level. I think, Mark, you might agree since it's on across the street from your house.
I'm here to listen, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
But duly noted, I'll double check that that's on.
yeah. And I mean, for what we call the big hill, it's prairie all the way down to the coast. You would have to actually cut into it to get a level area to put a sidewalk in. And on another one, you've got a stone retaining wall 1 foot from the curb. So they're rather impractical in a lot of the places and unnecessary.
Thank you.
Tom?
So I have a question. It's not necessarily something that we're going to answer, but maybe something to ponder. So this is an active transportation plan for moving from point A to point B. And then there's also passive recreation, which is one of the main purposes of the Conservancy. So when you have a trail that's through the Conservancy and it's on the bike network map, but it's also used by birders and people who just want to enjoy nature and not be moving from point A to point B. So my question for all of us is how do we resolve that, or how do we both of those things, and how do we balance them? And there may not be an answer.
That is a great question. I guess to the point of for what's in the plan right now, this map, we wanted to show all the areas that bikes are allowed to travel through. I know there were a couple of the smaller segments that Kylie and Kevin did a lot of great field verification of yep, a bike is allowed or not allowed, so we were able to have a realistic map that reflects where they are to go. As far as the user conflicts, it's a very real issue, and something that it, in my mind, comes down to the specifics of the design of that particular.
So the fact that a section of trail is in the bike network map does not necessarily mean that we've decided that that's the purpose of that trail.
It
Or that's the
means,
sole purpose of that, or that's the job. But there's
right, yeah. Correct. This documents all of the spots where bicycles are allowed to travel through. It doesn't say that, this is and people can use it for a variety of reasons. They can use it for transportation purposes, which is incredibly important, but also use for recreational uses. I don't think we have any parks rangers out there that would stop somebody and say, are you using this for transportation? Are you using this recreationally? It's hard to tell, on the ground, and so I think it'd be impractical to try to, aside from just, we want to encourage it as a transportation option, but it also, as a matter of practicality, would be hard to differentiate between the two.
Thanks.
Mary?
Are there like guidelines for bikes and speeds and things that are a part of this, or is that like a completely separate?
So the Madison Metropolitan Planning Organization, which does the regional bike network planning, they've come out with some guidelines. One of the great and also frustrating parts of this plan is people keep implementing it before we've actually adopted it. So this plan recommended deferring to those regional guidelines so that it's a consistent regional standard for that. That's just easier for communication and folks. So that's actually on my list of things I need to update in the plan. Is they published it very recently, I believe, and so I have to get that incorporated versus saying we will follow it when it is published. So
I think as far as like what trails are used for and whatnot, like I have an e-bike and I use my e-bike on here. I also have a non-electronic bike or electric bike. But I think just with birders, like just that awareness of like in a bike network map, would we go a step further and say this is an e-bike path, or like is that automatically like an asphalt path, or is it just any bike can go anywhere as long as it can fit on the path? Because I think the concern with a lot of people is the speeds. And like when you are using these Conservancy trails recreationally for stationary activity, meditating, birding, eating, whatever, like I get scared going fast, so I do not go fast. But we've all seen, people cruising down there, and you can go 20 miles an hour on a regular bike. So I'm not saying that people aren't also cruising down, but there's a different, perhaps like intention when someone's going fast on an e-bike. So that might be something to know. I don't know how even to wrap your arms around that really, because like, yeah, if it's coming from the county level, like I don't even know what you would even say, but I think just maybe it's something we just talk about when we're talking. Like we don't have to put up a sign or whatever, but we're communicating e-bike awareness somehow, because I think that's something that's just like it's getting more common, and then the users are also getting younger. So just something to talk about with like a transportation plan.
I guess one thing I'm concerned about on all these trails is when we've got multiple users like pedestrians and bikers, and we don't have any way of enforcing any guidelines at all. So I think as the city grows, we're going to need something like this. And one of the things, this is in terms of Mark's project, but I was reminded of, and I remember very clearly when I first got to Madison, on the UW campus, there is a trail going along the lake that was for both bikers and bicyclists. And a hiker was killed by a bicyclist, and they took the bikes off. We don't want to have things like that. We need to be thinking ahead so we prevent those kinds of accidents, or even just somebody getting injured by getting hit by a bike and so on. You know, we have police officers managing the streets. We have nothing on these trails, and we've got people that are elderly, reduced vision, wheelchairs.
Mhm.
We need to have it so that when we've got this mixed use, that it's really well made clear so everybody is comfortable.
Kylie,
Kylie.
sounded like you wanted to chime in.
Well, just on the there's a lot definitely going on with enforcement and signage, and there's a lot to be worked on through committees and that. We have been working, so the police department was funded 1,200 hour limited term or seasonal positions. They're community resource officer positions, and it's a brand new program they're implementing. The council funded that. I was a part of the hiring committee, so that was really exciting to be a part of that because it does cross over and support our conservancy.
So it's been expanded now to support Conservancy trails, because in the past it did.
The community resource officer positions are 2 limited term positions. They are being hired, and it is a brand new program for the police department. And the intention of that is to help educate the community. They can serve for an enforcement arm, but I think the main intention from the police department's perspective is enforcement of quality of life issues, and they will be a part of being on the Conservancy lands or parks or throughout our entire system. So I think or throughout our city, and this is an issue that has been brought forward not only to Conservancy lands, our staff, but additionally to the police department. So several departments have been notified that the use of our trails and enforcement and signage, and what is the rule, and like how do we communicate that. So I know the police chief very much values that feedback, and so does our department of how can we make it better through design and through with committee's help. I think it's a big, huge conglomerate of having committee involvement, having staff support that, and the police chief is doing a great job of trying to spearhead this within the staff team and getting the marketing and communications and trying to get stuff drafted through the staff team to come forward to these committees in the future. But so we don't have nothing, but we have something coming forward. We do have a parks ranger that is very limited as well, and does support that enforcement. But when what are we enforcing? We have to figure out what are we enforcing in the community and the ordinances, and what that looks like, and help educate. I think the biggest thing is like helping educate the entire community and staff team what that should look like.
It's awesome. I didn't know about the community resource officers. When does that start?
That is going to be up to the police chief. I know Tyler is is taking on that program, and I don't want to speak to it too much because it is not my program. And I think because it's brand new, introducing those staff and onboarding them, and I don't know what that scheduling looks like. They do want to have them utilize e-bikes, so they're looking into that and being a part of our trail system. But I think they have to roll that out in a more of a formal public than myself.
So this is a new program from their past resource officers.
There was a
community resource officer.
There's school resource officers and there's community resource officers. Those are 2 different objectives and goals. So these are new positions. They still have the school resource officer positions.
And we've had a community one too in the past.
Okay, well, I don't know that the police department said this is a brand new position and this brand new pilot program, so I will take their word for it.
Any other comments and feedback that you'd like to make the Ped Bike Transit Committee aware of as you were reading or thinking about the plan?
I look forward to reading it.
That's why I have the slides.
It's actually a really great read for anybody. It's not super technical where you can't digest it and understand it. I think any resident in the community, any staff member could read this and like know what we're the direction of the plan. So
That was the goal.
Okay. Next item is the referral of Pheasant Branch Road Complete Street concept. Alder Opitz.
So I guess this one's also mine 'cause it's related to the active transportation plan. So you might be wondering, we just talked about the active transportation plan. But it's more of a kind of boring process and scheduling reason for this separate referral of at the Ped Bike Transit's May meeting. This was first brought up as a option to be included within the active transportation plan itself. I'll let Mark speak to the specifics of it later, but generally to make the west side of Pheasant Branch Conservancy an all-season surface so that it can be more useful year-round for transportation uses. At the committee stage, folks were generally interested in pursuing the idea. However, knowing that we were targeting the Bike Week events as our big open houses and such, really wanted to, this was a topic that they wanted to make sure had enough time to get feedback and input from relevant stakeholders. So at the time they had recommended keeping it separate, but still pursuing it on a separate track so that the ATP could continue forward with that process. It was presented to council, who then referred it to Public Works and Conservancy Lands. So we delayed the open houses for a bit to give the time to have the proper feedback from you all, Public Works, Friends of Pheasant Branch, and members of the community that have been hearing about this concept. So my staff memo reviews just the general topic and some of the different options available. My assumption at this point, and pending approval by the Ped Bike Transit Committee, because we haven't talked about it in committee since that May meeting, but my recommendation is going to be to summarize the pros and cons of some of the different options that are available for addressing the concern about pedestrian bicycle safety along Pheasant Branch Road. So part of the goal here tonight is we would love to get your feedback on some of the pros and cons that you see with these various approaches to improving pedestrian bicycle safety along this corridor. And yeah.
So what is the complete streets concept?
So the idea of a complete street is one that accommodates all users, so not just cars, but also bicyclists, pedestrians, people in wheelchairs, etc.
And it's that the street will accommodate those people.
Correct. And sorry, I didn't mean to preempt. No, good. I didn't mean to preempt Mark. Mark, if you have anything to add that I missed or didn't cover, but
The chair would like me to address this. I can be brief.
Are you through with what you're saying?
yeah, I'm through with what I'm saying. We're just looking for feedback from you.
Then, Mark, maybe why don't you give us a brief summary?
Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you about this issue. I think you all know me. I'm the new alder for District 6. The Red Tail Ridge neighborhood to the north is rapidly growing. If you haven't been up there lately, I would encourage you to visit. There's a lot of new houses and apartments there that are disconnected from the rest of the city on the east side via Pheasant Branch Road with a safe pedestrian way and bicycle path. And so that issue, combined with the fatality we unfortunately all know about from Branch Street, in late April, really, and then the timing of the active transportation plan all coalesced to have me realize, what's our plan for Pheasant Branch Road? As Tom, as you noted, the complete streets concept does pertain to the road, but that road is, I doubt it's even 24 feet wide, but let's say it's a narrow road, and it doesn't have a sidewalk or bike path or shared use path along it, except for a short segment near Gaylord Nelson to serve a few houses, and a short segment at Conservancy condos from Old Creek Road. Those are the only two segments of sidewalk, and to extend the sidewalk and or add bike lanes or to put in a path instead of a sidewalk would have a significant impact on the Conservancy. On existing mature trees, dozens of trees would be affected. There'd be a need for a retaining wall, 1,000 feet long at least, and that was based on the design in 2002. At the time, the council, under Andy Lewis's leadership as the District 6 representative at the time, decided not to widen Pheasant Branch Road because it needed to be restored, repaired, reconstructed, and so they decided to repair it or to rebuild it as basically it was.
When was that?
2004, I think was that, or maybe it was 2005 was that vote? Probably 2004.
Decided not to.
Did not to widen. No, they reconstructed Pheasant Branch Road in the current cross section without adding.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you go along, I mean, you're all familiar with it. I mean, the east side, especially at the sharp bend, is quite a drop off. And so I'm just trying to help lead a community discussion in my new role to brainstorm ways to make this corridor safer. That's my central goal. And I'm very happy that that we have taken this time. I apologize to my former colleagues for just interrupting a process that was well underway. Obviously, I have a new role here, and I'm just trying to be responsive to and proactive, frankly. Red Tail Ridge is rapidly growing, and people are walking along the road. And there was a fatality 25 years ago along that road, and we had the one on Branch Street, and we just don't want to have anyone else get hurt. I love the Conservancy as much as anyone, I believe. We all love it. Everybody here in this room loves it. We cherish it. And I am very sensitive and totally understand the concerns about user conflicts and habitat. I really do believe I have a good understanding of that. The route I've proposed is parallel to Pheasant Branch Road, would be less disruptive to the Conservancy, less ecological impact, much less expensive to improve the path than to widen the road. And it follows the sanitary sewer interceptor, the northern part where it says, where you see existing unpaved path, that's actually a berm that comes in from Branch Street that was used to redirect the creek. And that was installed at least half a century ago. I don't remember when that was installed. That was way before my
70s.
Sometime in the 70s, was it? Yeah. So let's say 50 years. And so that's an artificial structure. It then crosses the bridge, jogs to the left, and then from there, going north, easterly, and then curving back, it follows a sanitary sewer interceptor that's in place. So it also provides the connectivity between paved paths along Whittlesey Road, on the north side of Whittlesey, excuse me, behind the houses. And then to the south, we have the North Mendota path, which I appreciate Friends of Pheasant Branch Conservancy cooperating and collaborating with the city. We decided to, speaking with my former role, we decided to improve the path along Century Avenue, which was replacing the sidewalk with the path instead of upgrading the path on the southeast side of the Conservancy, which was something that had been proposed, that frankly that I had proposed once. And so that's off the table as far as, at least from my standpoint. I can only speak for myself. But we're going to have this underpass that was alluded to by Scott, where down there at the bottom where the paved with the future trailhead underpass, that's going to come out there, and the connection up to Whittlesey would make it possible for people who have limited mobility and all season use of the path. The biggest concern, and I'll wrap up on this point, is user conflicts. That's what I'm hearing. And the path in the Conservancy, all the paths have been allowed to narrow over the last, I'll say 20 years since they went in. They were all built, the loop, excuse me, was built at 10 feet, not all the paths. There's some existing unpaved paths that are not designed for bicycle traffic, but the loop itself was installed at a width of 10 feet. And there are sections now that are down to 5 or 6 feet. And of course, that's going to make user conflicts more pronounced because, people are sharing a much more limited space. So I think it's possible. I think it's possible to do this in an ecologically sound way that is respectful of the different user groups by having areas for, like, the creek corridor was done to pull out, have pullouts for birding, etc. I think there's a way to have a shared resource. I don't expect a decision to be made on what after, but I was concerned that the active transportation plan was essentially silent on this issue, other than showing the need for a sidewalk. And I just felt like it was important to have this community discussion. So that's why I introduced it.
I have
Yeah, go ahead.
a question that might help solve a little of the conflicts. The piece of land right to the east of Conservancy condos is not owned by the city, as I understand.
It's an open space easement.
Is there a way to get that so that we could put a path through there and leave the main path unpaved?
I thought of that. I would love to see that happen, but that path got put in at a width of about 3 feet.
Yeah, it's super high.
And it was intentionally built that way so it wouldn't be used by bicyclists. That was something that then Alder Jim O'Brien advocated. But that would be nice to have that connect south to the trailhead. That would separate the uses.
That could separate the uses almost all the way up.
It occurred to me you could have the pedestrian, make it available for pedestrian use as it is.
Either one.
Yeah. And again, this is a big topic, right? I mean, there's a lot of people here who are passionate about and have views about this, and I respect that. I've known everybody at this table for a long time. Mary, you're the newest person, but I've known you for a year. And so I recognize this is a hot potato, if you will. I've looked at what's happening in the Madison area and other communities I've traveled in that have paved paths in environmentally sensitive areas. And this is not, it's not uncommon.
Yeah, my big concern is putting both on the same trail without some way of enforcing bicycles is a serious problem. If we can solve that, that makes a difference. I've got to admit, I don't want to see Pheasant Branch widen because we're going to get rid of a lot of natural areas, and the retaining walls that will have to go in on two sides and parts of it are going to be huge. It's going to make it a very unfriendly. It's going to take it out of
the road you're talking about.
But
on Pheasant Branch Road.
Yes. Backing up against the Middleton Hills, Conservancy Hill, it'll have to go into that. And then on the Conservancy condo side, that's like a 10-foot drop easily, if not more. And that land I've looked up belongs to Conservancy condos, so we can't go far into it.
You received an email at 5:46, at least I assume you all did. Kylie and Kevin were copied too. I didn't know it was coming, but unfortunately it didn't come before your meeting, you guys. From Craig. I've never met the guy, Craig. And so he listed some ecological that I had known in general terms, but not specifically. And so I would direct you to encourage you to review that message. It basically talked about runoff from crushed aggregate trails and how the runoff can affect fish habitat and erosion, and also the need for more frequent maintenance, which I touched on these concepts. I just didn't provide more detail to them.
Yeah. Some of that I've talked with Luke is still on here. I have talked with Luke about our current gravel trails. He says are compacted enough that we're not getting runoff of the gravel into the waters. So that seems to.
And they're also similar in imperviousness to, they're not quite as impervious, but they have a high degree of
a very high level of imperviousness. Yeah. There's a few small areas that stay sort of wet frequently. Yeah, Mary.
psychologist.
I don't know his background. Ronnie West. That's, I understand he's.
Little. Not, that was not disclosed.
I just saw the email literally as I was in this meeting, and I wished he had provided more context about his background.
I
But
think it would be good. I know, I personally would love to hear from someone like Evelyn or Kevin, friends, you know, what their take is on different types of.
no, understood.
Yeah,
Thank you. Go ahead.
I wasn't clear how familiar he was with the Middleton ones. Roads, freshly made gravel is going to run off into the surrounding areas with some time because it hasn't got compacted down.
Yeah, I think 3 hands up
Yeah.
there looking for.
So I think we need to look into this. I mean, I got it right before I left, so I quickly read it. Okay, who was next? Great.
Do you want to?
I'll wait.
I mean, I lived in Middleton till like 2014, then I left, and then I came back recently, and the paving from Pheasant Branch between Century and Park and Parmenter was new. So I feel like there's gotta be like a debrief or like historical recollection, like of course getting input from people with professional expertise, like the one we received at 546 is awesome, but like we have historical knowledge. We should have a debrief, I assume, from the city, from the friends group, like how did that go? What did we learn? Like just not, it's a different segment of trail. It doesn't have a tree canopy, for example. That's one thing with asphalt I would point out, but like, you know, for heat and internal versus peripheral conservancy lands and whatnot, as your plan or your concept brought up. But I just think we should really hear the full debrief. What worked well, what didn't, what are the expectations, or what were the expectations before that went through? How did it pan out? How do residents feel? Were there residents that were not fond of having that paved and now they love it? Like there are, there's an existing group of people that, yourself included, I'm sure you were here when they were doing all this, but like, I don't know, I just feel like that is the evidence that I would like to start basing my decisions off of, not just my personal preference, but also like what worked and how can we just like keep learning from that. I think learning from like standard specs, for example, like let's create our guidelines and at least use that as a basis for evidence that we can start building off of.
Yeah, Jerry, I was on CLC when we voted to put that through even. At that time, we didn't have as much use of these trails, so it wasn't as controversial an issue. I'm still friends with Penny Klein, who was public lands manager at that time, and I can ask her about it. Hans, you probably remember. There was controversy. I'll let you speak to.
And to start off, Mary did reach out to me. For those of you that don't know, I'm working kind of 2 full-time jobs right now, plus being the president of Friends of Pheasant Branch. So I'm just extremely behind on communications. And, you know, I would love to share a lot of the history going back to the late 90s and then again in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sharing some of the history of Mark's interest in paving the Conservancy and his role working here, and you know, the things that led up to the formation of the Bike Ped and Transit Committee, which then he staffed, really did stem from the separation of, okay, pave the corridor, but nothing north of Century Avenue, with the context of that the Bike Pedestrian and Transit Committee was going to develop everything that we're talking about here, rather than just falling back on, you know, well, we know that from the design that it's going to be expensive, but to really put that all into a comprehensive resource before bringing it back for a discussion. So, you know, making this part of the active transportation plan isn't a bad idea, but we're not getting any further ahead than what was decided by the Plan Commission in 2009. because we're still at the point where we haven't consolidated all those things and looked at all the options. And I think I've seen a lot of emails from Mark where he jumps to a lot of conclusions that, you know, this is the best approach, but collectively the community has reached that conclusion. And we need kind of the one report that everybody can agree that this is it. And, you know, one of the things Friends of Pheasant Branch did in the early 2000s was what led to the business park development in the North Fork, and being able to pull together all the stakeholders to look at that and have a plan going forward that had buy-in from everybody. And it's going to take that level of commitment to get the Friends on board with, you know, any sort of paving north of Century Avenue. Our response right now is very well in line with what was put in the Conservancy lands plan that we just went through, that we have so many other priorities to work on that we know will have a positive impact on the Conservancy, that me having to take my time to, you know, go back and get records from 2000 and 2009 to just kind of put some water on this fire that's coming through right now isn't really the best use of our organization's time and resources, because we've already been down that. And it would be nice if I just had a white paper that I could hand you that explains all that, but it's not something that we've put together yet, because we thought that this issue had kind of been settled in the Conservancy lands plan about that more holistic look.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did just briefly look up the Craig person. If it's the person that I think, he appears to work in IT. That doesn't mean that he doesn't know anything about the subject of lands, but yeah, it doesn't appear that his professional background is there. One thing that I've heard Mark people say is that for the paved part that's over the sewer, that part will not be very durable and will need to be repaved frequently. Is that something that you can comment on?
I'm not, are you talking about because of sewer maintenance? Is that what you're, because I think that concern has been raised, is if there's a need to maintain the sewer, then heavy vehicles would have to enter along that route, which is the trail route. I mean, that's why the trail is there. The trail is there because it's a maintenance route. That's pure and simple. Why
I think Luke can answer that.
Yeah. And the creek quarter, by the way, same thing. That's a sewer interceptor route, and that was originally a sewer maintenance route.
Yeah, and that's part of why it was paved. I sort of, it was pushed as it would help or not hurt.
Don't agree with that. So it seems like the question of whether it's on a interceptor route or on a berm, what applicability does that have to decision making? I don't see how that affects anything. I mean, so what?
Yeah.
But what I really want to ask, complete streets plan. You have a traffic problem on Pheasant Branch Road. It's too narrow. People have, you know, there's big safety concerns. Do you really think that moving traffic off, some traffic off that without doing anything to that road, you're going to solve the problem just by moving some of the users off of the road? And then you, so I want to hear what your plan for Pheasant Branch Road is beyond just, we don't want to spend money on it. Because I think if we went ahead and put the work into paving the West Trail, I have zero confidence that the city won't be addressing the issue, and you'll be addressing the issue as an alderman of traffic safety on Pheasant Branch Road. If you don't do anything about the road, how is that going to solve the problem?
The safety issue is the fact that it's not safe for pedestrians or bicycles. For cars, the safety issue are the turkeys and deer.
So my question again is, how is not doing anything to that road gonna address the safety issues on that road?
bikers.
For anybody. Just the whole concept that the solution to a problem with safety problems on Pheasant Branch Road is to ignore Pheasant Branch Road and direct everybody to this trail. And it seems like that's because it's cheaper and it's convenient, and we don't want to bite the bullet and deal with the hard problems.
I
Pheasant
think,
Branch Road. And so, can I finish?
yeah,
So I would like to see the data, like Hans is talking about. I would like to understand, I would like to focus before we come in and we say we're going to move everything into the Conservancy and that's going to solve our problems. Where's the traffic analysis and the safety analysis on Pheasant Branch Road? I think that's the place to start.
I can answer a few things there. One of the things, if we make Pheasant Branch Road wider, it's going to be dumping all of that traffic into the Middleton Hills retail area, which will be an absolute disaster because it will be going into an even narrower 2-lane road to a 4-way stop. And it's already a very congested 2-block area of everybody trying to get into Metro Mart or into the businesses there. So by keeping Pheasant Branch Road narrow so that we don't encourage traffic from the north, we protect the retail area. Now,
okay, and my point is that your opinion on that is worth something, but it's not the same as having a traffic analysis done. And I want
the
to
traffic
see,
analysis would confirm that, I'm pretty sure. Mary?
well, I would like to see that.
The Public Works Committee just looked at a traffic, I mean, just
Yes.
talking about efficiency, money spent, stakeholders' time of council, staff time. There was this traffic impact analysis done on Old Creek Road and Pheasant Branch Road very recently.
Mhm.
My issue with this coming up after the fact is we already spent all that time and money talking to people about this that would have something to say about the reconstruction of Pheasant Branch Road. When this came up during the Public Works meeting last month, my position is that Pheasant Branch Road needs to be redone. The quote that keeps popping up in my head is that it's something that keeps people up at night. That's putting a Band-Aid on something that's going to turn into far worse. I think if the Conservancy wasn't there, the council's impetus would be to fix Pheasant Branch Road. And for that reason, I just feel like this is not the direction that I would go in at all.
May I make a suggestion?
Mhm.
I would like to, oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay, I just wanted to say something that I said at Plan Commission last night, so and this kind of goes to Tom's point, I think, but in a different direction. Technically, our complete streets policy applies when we are either constructing new roads or reconstructing roads and designing, just like High Road right now has undergone this process, and the original design changed a lot to incorporate complete streets policy. It says in the policy, the city will incorporate this policy into all public right-of-way improvements and project phases, including planning, programming, design, right-of-way acquisition to the degree allowed by statute, permitting, subdivision and land development, construction management, operation, etc. Pheasant Branch Road is not in the 5-year street improvement plan.
We brought it up that we'd like it to.
Right.
Mhm.
Until it's technically in that plan, it's, I think, premature to be talking about how to turn Pheasant Branch into a complete street, or have part of it be improved and, make sure that more vulnerable users, bikes and pedestrians, can be accommodated in some other way, especially in that southern portion where it really will be very difficult, if not impossible, or cost prohibitive to widen the road. So I'm glad to hear that Pheasant Branch Road is going to be making it onto the 5-year plan. I would say that the complete streets discussion should wait until it happens.
If I may suggest, you have a long agenda.
Yeah.
And I heard the president of the Friends of Pheasant Branch. You're now the sole president, right? You're not the co-president.
Correct.
So I heard Hans talk about what I'm hearing from him is a desire to have more discussion. And one thought I've had, I'd like to offer this again to Hans. I reached out to you in early May about this, and I offered to meet with the Friends of Pheasant Branch, and I've never heard back about that. Instead, there was a communication to the city that I wasn't copied on. I would like to invite and offer to help with the Friends, have a community discussion, maybe in the council chambers some evening in July, to discuss the history that we just outlined, that you just mentioned, that you cited, to go back, say, here's how the discussions have been for the last 30 years, to share those perspectives and to have that community discussion. I frankly, from what I heard Scott say, in terms of his intent for how he's going to update the active transportation plan, I'm satisfied with the direction that he's described in his staff comments or in his remarks at the beginning of the meeting, that he's going to lay out the pros and the cons and include that in the document. That was really my objective. And so I think having this discussion, having it recognized that it's an issue in the active transportation plan is satisfactory in my view. I recognize that this is obviously an emotional issue. I do not agree with the characterization that Mark wants to pave the Conservancy, which is what you just said.
I didn't say that.
No, I'm looking at him. Sorry for the point.
Oh, you're looking at him.
I thought what you said, Mark
Are you
wants to
looking at
pave
me?
the Conservancy. And I don't agree with that characterization. That's never how I felt. So I would like to try and help de-escalate. I never intended to have this be inflammatory. I apologize that it's come that way. I would like to offer to help with the community discussion about this issue. I think it's really important. And I don't know what to tell the residents that I represent now in Red Tail Ridge. If we wait 5 years for something to get on a plan, 5-year improvement plan, I don't know what to tell them in the meantime about their safety.
I would address that by saying the path, the connector between Red Tail Ridge and the Conservancy path is in the plans for Red Tail Ridge and should be done. That can be done separately from working on any improvements to Pheasant Branch.
Hopefully it develops.
Hopefully it will.
Yeah.
So where does that path go?
Well, I talked to county staff about this as well, just to because I had heard that there was this view that the county has to sign off on this. What I'm proposing on the north end, going north of where it's a paved path north of Whittlesey Road, and actually the photo you see on the left is to the west of the property boundary sign. So here's the sign right here. So what I'm proposing is to have this be located, this part to be located entirely in the right of way, and the town of Springfield is amenable to allowing the right of way.
You're proposing a road.
A path.
Yeah,
How does that address the traffic problems at the south end?
it doesn't.
Those have been there for decades. I mean, they're just getting worse.
I know, so why don't we fix it?
I'm helping jumpstart this conversation. That is what my memo has accomplished.
Yeah, and fine. And I'm just saying, let's look at the roadway.
I'm
Yeah,
all for it.
okay.
And
You know,
looking at the roadway would have to include the intersection of Pheasant Branch Road and Frank Lloyd Wright.
Mhm.
yeah, and I'm all for it. I as Mary noted that there was a recent very limited traffic study at the Old Creek Road, Pheasant Branch Road curve. So
No, I'm not talking about that one.
anyway,
And
I see Mary.
Mary,
I just want to make a clarify my own point. Mayor and I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted you to know that like we talked about Pheasant Branch Road when Alder Opitz came to our meeting last month. We talked about it during the 5-year plan, which was the meeting after that. When we were looking at the 5-year plan and we thought, hey, Pheasant Branch Road should be on here. Obviously, I think we can all acknowledge that the financial lift of that would push everything else down. And I think there has been, everyone knows that that's going to be a massive project. I would love to see the energy and awareness of this problem for your residents put into Pheasant Branch Road. Like, I think we all on the Public Works Committee have acknowledged that. You're acknowledging it. It is a public safety concern. I think the Common Council would also acknowledge that. Like, I think if there was that, and what I said in our May meeting, like the full-throated response of like, if we really want to do this, what you can tell your residents is tell them to come to the Public Works Committee and say, we want a new road. Get everyone that cares about this and is concerned about fatalities and is concerned about the longevity of that rustic road to come speak up and like, let's prioritize it. I think because, you know, it's going to be a multi-million-dollar project and there are other things in Middleton that has to get done. Like when I followed up with the public works leaders like Ben, John, and Luke afterwards, I asked them about Pheasant Ranch Road because we didn't get fully into it. Like during a 5-year plan, it would have kind of taken our agenda like on a complete side journey. And so they said, I got a reply saying that this is something that we'll talk about in our first meeting in July. Now, during that meeting, to my knowledge, the direction that the chair would like to go in would be more on safety, asphalt condition, road classification, easement with utilities in the area, et cetera. And because it takes a lot for staff to like put together stuff for us to talk about. So I don't think that that will be like a design that's, well, I know for a fact it's not going to be like, let's design Pheasant Ranch Road. That's not what's going to happen. But I think that starting that acknowledgement, you did start the acknowledgement. And I think if we did a full-throated, like public incorporated reply to how everyone's feeling about Pheasant Branch Road, saw how that went, and then this would come if those answers were not met, that would be more satisfactory to me as a taxpayer and as someone who's sitting as a liaison from Public Works and in this committee. I have not heard anyone from our water utility say we need to have a paved path to take on this. So I think there's different ways to talk about it, but I really, if people feel energized about this, if it's something that they want to like focus on, I also still think we should have a historical meeting to talk about all of this stuff, you know, but I think as Hans said, like putting water on it, like, I don't think that this should be the direction that we're going on with Pheasant Branch Road if everyone's concerned about public safety and there's going to be cars, people in Wisconsin drive, people in Middleton drive. We need to make sure that the roadway is prepared to handle that traffic, not just pushing it onto a conservancy.
One reason it's kept narrow, one reason it's kept narrow and the decision was to keep it narrow was to actually help slow speeds.
Sure, yes, yeah.
So that was a key part of it.
Mm-hmm. And it does.
But let's save, I'm happy to save that for a future discussion. I will work with Hans. My offer remains to help facilitate this discussion. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
I think there's a few more hands up.
Who was first?
I think technically.
So I don't want to belabor this, but let's take a look at the map. Okay. Here's the problem area, right? Where's the development going to happen in the city of Middleton in the next 10 years? It's going to fill this in, right? And what is going to happen to Pheasant Branch Road as that happens? We've already seen what's happening with Redtail. So how could we possibly imagine that we're not going to be back here in 5 years if the answer is to not address the road, but to move everything over onto a path?
I will point out that right here, the road actually has gone across private property. We probably now own it, but which would put it into the Conservancy to push it to the east, taking out some major trees.
I'm glad that Public Works has it.
He had
It's good. Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, well, I was gonna ask you, Mark, and you can address this along with whatever you were about to address, is what were you looking for from the committee tonight?
My objective was for the active transportation plan to be edited to reflect that safety along Pheasant Branch Road for pedestrians and bicyclists is a significant issue facing the city. And to treat it as we do some other quarters that are listed with the narrative in the active transportation plan. That was my objective. What I don't want to see happen is for the plan to not address it and then have, if this idea surfaces in a few years, someone says, oh, well, this wasn't addressed in the active transportation plan.
I agree.
And that's my concern. You know, I don't want someone to say, well, previously adopted plan said we can't do this. I want this to be identified as a serious community concern, which is, I think, what we're all agreeing there's a serious safety.
Mark, I would add, when you're talking to people, if you're in proposing to widen Pheasant Branch Road, you have it making Old Creek Road the appropriate intersection with Century Avenue. That would take off, I mean, dumping all that traffic in the main part of Middleton Hills is going to be a real disaster with pedestrians.
I would say that now we're starting to get into.
Public works.
Yes.
Yeah.
So for
Kylie.
purposes, and not to cut anybody off, but just to summarize what I'm hearing, sounds like the Conservancy Lands Committee would like to see some acknowledgement of the various options here. I will summarize the different comments, what some of the pros and cons have been. And the committee would prefer not that we have a option specified at this point as the preferred option, but that, you know, in conjunction with the potential reconstruction project of Pheasant Branch Road, that, you know, during this process, these were some of the options that were identified that could be reviewed for impacts to Conservancy, for impacts to safety, and all the other things that we've discussed today. Does that sound like a fair summary of, for the purpose of the action transportation plan, of where the committee is at?
Yeah, I think also one of the things is if we go with the paved path, that option, that we make sure we've got plenty of, as you were saying, the community resource officers to monitor safety issues there too.
I can add that to the list too.
Yeah, I just think I just want to say this because Hans brought this up and I want to echo this. The Conservancy Lands Plan that was worked on for many hours with adaptive restoration that was adopted with that next 5 years laid out of where this body and where we are going as Conservancy land. So I think that's always important to remind ourselves, like, the direction of where we want to get to in 5 years. All of that said, like, whenever we have a 5-year plan, we can't always get through all of it. And then I also think it's really important. I've seen this come up numerous times that when we're making opinions or comments on items that might not have a professional like background on it, I think it's important to get the real data so that we can look at this holistically. So, and things are brought up in on gravel and how that affects ecological or vegetation. Like, I think it's important that we're commenting on that through data and through somebody's lens that has that educational background or that professional background to be providing that evidence-based opinion. And that's what we're making decisions on. I don't want to be making decisions on pure opinion.
And I would second that and extend that includes, when we're talking about traffic issues and road design, transportation corridors, that needs to also be a data-driven.
And forestry assessment.
Yeah.
So we don't need any motions on this.
Nope, don't need any motion. I'll summarize the takeaways from this meeting for Bike Transit to review at their July 9th meeting. They'll make a recommendation for what will be in the plan when it goes out for public input. We'll hear from the public on the plan and we'll make another round of revisions after that for final approval to the council.
Thank you all for your time.
Thanks.
Next item, overview of the 2027 budget process and discussion of budget priorities.
Yeah, so this item is on the agenda basically as a reminder that with this committee's position having meetings near the end of the month, we're at a somewhat more abbreviated timeline to look at budget issues. So I have attached on here our budget requests, what was approved, what was not approved, what we asked for capital and for operational funding. I'm happy to go through that stuff with you. Mainly my ask of the members of this committee would be to review our Conservancy lands plan, which we just talked about, and the recommendations within that plan as we set priorities for the next year and 5 years. So I can go through any of those documents there. In the interest of time, we can.
And
What does this committee need? Yeah.
Yeah, so the 26, these documents, we've approved the capital improvement plan, which I would suggest everybody go back and look at, so we're really familiar with it. And we've approved the 2026 budgets. And
so this
it's 8.
Yeah, this represents in 2026 what we put forward as our 15 priorities. The numbers with or the items with numbers in the 2026 column were ones that we identified in the priority year of 2026. And then moving down, you can see that there's things that come up as we move closer to 2030. So we've got on here restoration of Confluence Pond, North Fork, South Fork. Typically, we have a plan that gets written, and then we ask for funding to implement the recommendations within that plan.
So which of these items were actually funded for 2026? That's that one.
This is something that Kevin and I will be evaluating over the next month to get on to the next agenda.
Okay. What was funded in 2026?
Yep, in this column here, Conservancy lands, and you can see the items in green were approved, and the items in pink with the N were not funded.
Okay. So we should look at this in terms of that other document.
I think having an idea of what priorities this committee has, and bringing that into our next meeting is the most important thing that I could convey.
Okay.
And the operation budget.
Mary was looking to put in a comment.
Can you just briefly explain what the signage program is? Is that all new signage?
Yeah.
The signage program. So we would love for all of our capital projects to be essentially a program. So if it's the trail maintenance program, the signage program, we have a playground program for parks and on Park PRFC. And so that and it's the committee or this body would work on that program and what based off of the CLP or the Conservancy lands plan, start implementing that in that kind of bucket. And so we don't have a separate request, like a separate sign request for each year for a different thing. It would be a program. So I'd love to see that in the future. But we essentially for this signage program, and we don't have all the attached what are they called, narratives on this, but this one was for all the main trailheads or trailhead signs. So as you're in the creek corridor on Park Street, that there's a sign on both sides as you enter into Pheasant Branch Conservancy Creek corridor, or if you're entering into Pheasant Branch and any of the entry points, there's a lot of signage needs for that. So we wanted to start with our main trailhead signs, but there's definitely a lot of educational, or we as staff, and I know there's been several residents, I'm heard a lot of feedback in my time here for signage, and that's not just a personal, I should say, that's from in the Conservancy lands plan identified. There's a need for a lot of signage, so we are hoping to start with those main signs throughout the Conservancy lands system. So like Esser Pond has a sign, and it's Esser Pond Conservancy, just for instance, and that's what that budget is for. And we're hoping to implement that this year, ordering signs, but we still need funding to complete that program. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done with like guidelines,
Yeah.
we brought up earlier, but I hope that gives a little bit.
I think I'm just thinking obviously there's like the main Conservancy signs, but I'm thinking of Quarry Hill Conservancy, which does not have a sign at all. And so kind of presenting those points for different parts of the Conservancy system that don't have any signage at all is also important.
Yeah, yep, that's what that would be for.
Yeah.
And the degraded signs, we want to replace them, so it's like you know that it's a City of Middleton Park or Conservancy, and it's tied in.
Yeah, I think absolutely. That's the main thing is knowing that this is a conservative. So you're riding, you had a picture of the creek corridor path, and as you come up under Deming Way, do you know that you're in Confluence Pond Conservancy, and do you know that it's a City of Middleton stormwater facility? Having just those identify features that this is Conservancy land, knowing it, yeah.
And a mapping, of course, so there's lots of things for sure. Just to kind of go off this is the capital, and we would love to hear any feedback tonight to that anybody has, but if you don't, we'll be bringing back our presented capital plan based off of the Conservancy lands plan, based off of what we submitted in the past, and then we'll have some more trail pieces. There's a bridge abutment that needs work in the Conservancy, so just making sure that our trail projects continue forward as well. Maintenance.
Kylie, I will say I have heard a lot of comments about signs, not the main signs for a Conservancy, but the smaller trail direction signs and regulations, and that there are a lot of missing things in there. And I can forward you the letter about that.
Yeah,
Yep.
no,
And I think,
we've got
having funding for it and having a plan for what gets implemented.
Yeah, that's
Those are
incredibly
the
important.
two pieces.
That helps on the
Yeah.
safety issue. What else on that?
That's if no one else has questions, that's basically an introduction to.
that was the capital,
Oh,
so
you have-
I just wanted to also bring up that the operational, I know we've been here for a long time, but bear with me. So operational, really important to talk about, and just that we haven't seen an increase in our operational in numerous years, and that's called out in the Conservancy lands plan. I know we did get funding for a staff, which is an amazing resource to continue moving forward, so that was a positive for our department and Conservancy land specifically. But then our operational, I think we want to continue to look at that and be very strategic on how we can see at least a partial increase in some of those line items, because we have gained numerous more acres of Conservancy lands, and so we can't continue to operate at the same standard without an increase in the future. So
Kylie, I completely agree with that. And I think something I've been noticing is just Conservancy lands since COVID, the usage has just, I can't put an estimate on it. It used to be at that park by Gaylord Nelson, the parking lot there, you might see one or two cars. Now they're going up and down the road, which makes for a safety issue. But we need to get lots of people maintaining the conservancies, because we are getting such increased number of people using the conservancies. And this is what council needs to realize, that when you've got that many people using it, it's incredibly important to the city, and keeping it up and safe is a very important thing that we need to be doing. So staffing is probably more important in some ways than some of these new projects even.
Kevin and I will look at that and try to bring some
Do you have
recommendations.
numbers for any of these areas?
Yeah, I think again, data is really important,
Yes,
right?
these numbers would be fantastic.
Speaking towards data, I can't sit here and say the usage has or hasn't increased 100% confidently without that data. And there are systems that we can put in place. We do have pedestrian, or what are those?
Head counters,
Head
yeah.
counters.
These are not cameras, but they're basically counters that we have at our trail facilities.
They can't.
They can be wildly inaccurate, but they also their inaccuracy is the same over time. So if we are seeing increases, we do have that.
We won't have the number of use on something,
we can
but
see
we can
trends.
see a trend.
Increase.
But that might be something of importance. I know there's other data collectors, if that's this body would like to see usage numbers in our conservancy. There are other items that can be utilized to collect data on usage throughout our conservancy, but there are systems or softwares that would have to be built for our community. And I don't know if that's of interest of anybody, but it's a budget item for sure. And
I think we only really need rough numbers in terms of usage, but not, we need accurate numbers, but not precise numbers to put it mathematically. But
the usage has been going up.
Yeah.
We need to be able to show that to council.
yeah, I would say our system.
We finished.
yes,
Yeah, okay. All right.
Okay, what's next?
Signage.
I'm so sorry. I didn't even realize I asked about signage and there's a there's
No.
literally, I could have read, but I promise I was thinking about,
I was a little bit confused. But...
Sorry, no.
Okay. Signage, I mentioned I've had multiple people complaining about the quality of not the main signs, but the little signs,
Stickers.
the stickers and so on. And actually, I will say, Mark showed me a sign. I thought you sent it to me, but I don't have a copy of it, of a sign in one of the county parks that had very clearly written out like 5 main rules that made it very easy to see. And I'm a little concerned. I think we maybe need to look at something like that, because the little stickers, if you're a bike rider, you're not going to necessarily stop and look at the little sign. But the bigger sign saying beware pedestrians or some of those things could be quite useful. So I'll try to get that picture and show it to you guys. But it hit me as being, in terms of getting the message across, very clear without having to read a whole lot of words in one little sign. Which
and as we kind of touched on in the previous discussion is having a plan that we can use conservancy wide. So these start with policy issues of things like the question of e-bikes and what users are permitted on each trail, having those policies in place, and then having a signage program that can accurately describe those things to the users as they're out there, so people know that this is a trail that KL. Who is KL?
Ken Madden.
Could be
Kevin Munson.
Yes.
I don't know. Could be Kevin Munson.
Because didn't he
Are we
submit something?
allowed?
Yes, he submitted.
Yeah.
I submitted
Yes,
this one.
we'll do that.
So there's a pretty big story. There's a lot of things going on in there, and the users.
We're currently our audio is currently off. Yeah, he's trying to talk.
So you can't hear me. Okay.
Oh, there.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Kevin, this is Kevin Munson.
Yes, this is Kevin Munson.
Put-
So I requested
put-
this particular item because of feedback that I'm getting from people actually out there. They don't know what the basic ordinances are, the rules and regulations. They're going off path, they're camping back there, starting fires, they have their dogs running around, and with all the vandalism going on, we were asked, if you see something, say something. So I've been doing that a little bit, and I get back is nobody knows any of the rules because they're not posted anywhere. And the trail markers do need to go do an inventory and and replace some of the stickers on the trail marker, and one trail marker needs to be replaced at Sabin Merchant Point because it was vandalized. So that's just really minor stickers, decals that literally have no cost to it. It'd be more of the cost of just surveying. But on all the feedback that I get, and you guys know that I'm back there probably more than anybody, I get a lot of feedback from all the new people since COVID, and they say they have they don't even know it's a conservancy. And much less they don't know what the basic rules are. I mean, I caught some photographers this year at the base of the bald eagle nest, disturbing the bald eagles while they were nesting. So that's a federal offense, right? And we don't want that. And U.S. Fish and Wildlife came back and said, if you have to make sure that the patrons are successful. So the landowners are really responsible if the patrons aren't successful. So I asked them,
Wrap
you
this
mean that?
up quickly because this has been a
so
very
anyway-
long meeting. So we've got the
Oh.
land signage. I think we've got enough that this can maybe be a future agenda item or something.
Well, it's something we need to fix right away, and I'm more than willing to go back and get the stickers
can't
and
hear him.
replace the trail signage. So anyway, just it does need to get these things need to be addressed in a
Yes.
timely fashion.
Okay, I will.
Okay,
I
I'm
will
done.
work with you on making a list of some of these specific things to give to Kylie and Kevin
Okay.
so we can address them in the future.
There's a lot of programs to work on.
Yes,
Okay.
that's why I said I'll work with him.
Oh,
Okay. Let's see. Next is repair Branch Creek corridor bridges. Thank you. This I'm asking about because Mark Sullivan came to council and talked about it, and I would just like to get an update because from his description and what he told me, it was like there are areas with yellow orange cones in the Conservancy on bridges that need to be repaired.
Sure. The creek corridor redecking is a project that this committee put into their budget request. That request was approved. The amount of money that we have available would cover redecking of the 5. Correct me if I'm wrong.
well, hopefully,
Hopefully,
because it
cover the expensive redecking 5 bridges within the creek corridor.
I guess his concern was it something that could be fixed, like 1 or 2 boards?
And
quickly?
hopefully people have seen
So it's not a hazard.
that the Parks crew and the Conservancy Lands crew have done to shore up some of these issues. Some of the complications of repairing the deck is major repairs have to be done from underneath, and therefore have to be done all at once, which, as you can imagine, entails closing off the creek corridor for a period of time. So we have made stopgap measures to take care of any concerns that we have safety wise. But I can assure you that the bridges are safe to pass over for pedestrians, for people on bikes, for our parks crew in their trucks.
Okay. So I can give him a call and reassure him they've been repaired.
I think anyone walking the creek corridor should be able to see that.
where the redecking will come back to this committee as a bid, award of bid. And so that timeline we're looking at will be in, I need a calendar here. The redecking is scheduled for November, December, January, and February. So that's lower pedestrian because it does require closures. We don't have everything confirmed because we didn't have a bid opening for this project yet. And that is highly variable until all of it comes back to this body and it goes forward to Finance Common Council for approval of award of bid. So the timeline on when that should be seen by this committee would be August 26 for a referral to common council in September. But we have to open the bid and make sure everything is prepared and ready to go for a recommendation. And the DOT biannually inspects the pedestrian bridges, so that does occur. And then our crew has been inspecting our ped bridges along with boardwalks, not only probably on a weekly basis, but more at these sites this spring and last fall, and have made some minor repairs, knowing that we have a full redecking project ahead of us.
And liaison. So we'll already get. And resources. We've talked about several things, mainly projects for maintaining various stormwater features. So the Greenway Boulevard thing proposal was submitted, but not enough information, so we took no action. There were proposals for the South Pond dredging, which will be done. And if somebody, you're familiar where these are. The South Pond?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. The Confluence Pond, they're putting out a proposal for redesigning the weir so that it's actually a little bit lower at the lowest spot, so it won't be kept as high a level. And then this is an interesting one for this committee too. On the Middleton Hills detention ponds, they had to repair a stormwater drain going into the detention pond because the willow roots had grown from outside into it up about 10 or 15 feet. So they had to take that out, and they're planning on taking out all of the willows. So this is relevant to what Eleanor's planning on vegetation around all these stormwater ponds and streams, connecting streams. Is willows can be a big disaster. It's basically it. And we did talk about paving the Conservancy, Pheasant Branch Conservancy path, and an update on all the benefits of the Confluence Pond, especially in terms of phosphorus removal, which it's doing a fantastic job on. So, and future agenda meeting items.
Oh, did Mary didn't give her?
Yes.
We discussed a lot of the things from here, but just for people watching online, and also for our own notes, my quick report as Public Works Liaison, that Pheasant Branch Road was brought up during our June 8th meeting when we discussed the 5-year plan. It's my understanding it will be added as a discussion item to the first Public Works meeting in July. When this does come up, there will be discussion like it discussed on safety, asphalt condition, road classification, easement width, utilities in the area, things of this nature. Staff, the public works staff will be working on different options for us to discuss. That meeting will not include new design discussions. So that's not what's being discussed, but given what we heard tonight, and that's relevant, just it's on everyone's mind. That's it.
Okay. Any future meeting agenda item? I think putting Kevin's discussion details list of, I will forward the email to you.
What's the title of the agenda item?
Trails still.
Oh.
From Kevin Munson. Since he had a whole, I will forward you the email that can be forwarded to the rest of the committee.
I did see that. I think we've got it.
You and I think, have it, but I don't know the whole committee.
Any other future agenda items that anyone wants to bring up? All right, staff will be bringing budget, of course. You'll see Confluence Pond, management plan again. And then I think some action on, River Pond, management recommendations.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
We made it.
So patient.
That a record?
No.
Oh.
Thanks for all that you're doing with this.
Yeah. You know,
Did you